The shrill ringing of my phone jolted me awake in the dead of night. I fumbled for it in the darkness, my heart pounding. "Hello?" I answered groggily. "Everly, it's Trish." My sister's shaky voice came through. "You need to get to Mercy Hospital. Dad's had a stroke." The words slammed into me like a truck, sending a jolt of panic through my body. I sat upright, the blood draining from my face. "Oh my God. What happened?" My fingers gripped the edge of the sheets as I struggled to process her words. Damon stirred beside me. "Everything okay?" he mumbled sleepily. I waved him off, focused on Trish's strained voice. "Just get here fast, it's bad." The line went dead. I stared at the silent phone for a beat, my mind racing. "Dad, Mercy Hospital. I had to move. Now." "Damon, wake up!" I shook his shoulder roughly. "We need to go. My dad's in the hospital." He groaned and threw his arm over his eyes. "Can it wait till morning?" "No, it can't wait," I shot back, my voice rising with each word. "He had a stroke. We need to leave now." Damon let out an exasperated sigh and swung his legs over the side of the bed. All right, give me a minute." I leapt up and started throwing on clothes, fueled by a rising panic. What if we didn't make it in time? I couldn't bear the thought of losing Dad without. "Would you relax?" Damon grumbled, pulling on his jeans. "It's the middle of the night. We'll get there when we get there." I whirled on him, my fear and frustration boiling over. "Are you kidding me right now? My father could be dying and you're acting like this is some minor inconvenience." He held up his hands in mock surrender. "Geez, no need to bite my head off. Let's just go." I grabbed my purse and keys and stormed out, Damon shuffling along behind me. The night air was bitterly cold as we climbed into his car. I pulled my jacket tight, my mind fixated on Dad. Please let him be okay. Please. The car remained eerily silent as Damon guided it onto the deserted roads. I stared out the window, watching the inky darkness whip past, praying we wouldn't be too late. Then, without warning, Damon abruptly pulled off the road and into a deserted diner parking lot. "What are you doing?" I cried in disbelief. "We have to get to the hospital." He killed the engine and turned to face me, his expression unreadable. "Listen, Everly, we need to talk." A knot formed in the pit of my stomach. His tone made the hairs on the back of my neck prickle. "I can't keep doing this," he continued flatly. I stared at him, a creeping sense of dread wrapping its icy fingers around me. "Doing what?" "Damon, what are you talking about?" His next words sliced through me like a cold dagger. "I'm done. It's over between us. Now get out of my car." I stared at Damon in stunned silence, certain I must have misheard him. "What did you say?" He met my gaze evenly, his expression devoid of any emotion. "You heard me. We're through. Now get out." The cold finality in his voice pierced my heart like a million shards of ice. This couldn't be happening. Not now. Not when my family needed me most. "Are you insane?" I choked out, anger rapidly replacing my shock. "My dad's in the hospital fighting for his life and you're breaking up with me? What is wrong with you?" Damon's lip curled in a sneer. "Always with the hysterics. No wonder everyone thinks you're a drama queen. Your sister probably just made the whole thing up as an excuse for you to go running." White-hot rage flooded my veins at his cruel dismissal of my family's situation. With a strength I didn't know I possessed, I slapped him hard across the face. "How dare you?" I seethed, retrieving my purse from the footwell. "You're a vile, heartless bastard." Without another word, I flung open the door and stormed out into the frigid night. Damon didn't even blink as I slammed it behind me. My boots crunched across the frozen parking lot as I walked away, the bitter chill raising goosebumps on my exposed skin. Tears of fury and heartbreak stung my eyes, but I blinked them back defiantly. I wouldn't give that bastard the satisfaction. Wrapping my arms around myself, I looked up and down the deserted roadway. A solitary flickering streetlight illuminated my solitary figure, the inky night stretching endlessly in both directions. With a shuddering breath, I started walking. The farther I got from the diner, the angrier I became at Damon's reprehensible actions. How could he be so cruel and selfish at a time like this? My family was in crisis, and all he cared about was himself, just like everyone had warned me. I clenched my fists tightly, my nails digging painfully into my palms. No, I refused to play the victim here. I was done letting Damon or any man dictate how I should feel or react. This wasn't the end. It was just the beginning of his downfall. My steps quickened, as I plotted how I would make that smug bastard pay for what he'd done. The first step was getting to Dad and sorting out this mess with my sister. Then the real work would begin. I would rally my friends and connections around me, people who could see Damon for the scumbag liar and con artist he truly was. We would take him down a piece at a time, his reputation, his income sources, everything. By the time I was through with him, Damon Blackwood wouldn't be able to smooze or swindle his way out of a paper bag. I would destroy him, just like he tried to destroy me and my family tonight. Only then would I finally be free of his toxic presence. Squaring my shoulders, I marched onward into the night. A woman on a mission fueled by simmering fury and the thirst for vengeance. After what felt like an eternity of walking, the harsh glow of the hospital lights finally appeared through the inky night. My feet were numb and my body shivered violently, but I pressed on, driven by the need to get to my father. I burst through the entrance, startling the skeleton crew working the night shift. A nurse at the front desk looked up in surprise. "Can I help you, miss?" "My father, Edward Carrington," I panted, struggling to catch my breath. I was told he was admitted. A stroke. The nurse's brow furrowed in confusion as she typed something into her computer. "I'm sorry. I'm not showing any patient admitted by that name this evening." A leaden sense of dread coiled in the pit of my stomach. "What? That can't be right." My sister Trish called and said, "Everly?" A familiar voice made me spin around. My stomach bottomed out when I saw my sister striding across the lobby, looking concerned but very much unruffled. "What the hell is going on?" I demanded through gritted teeth. "Where's Dad? What happened?" Trish's expression turned remorseful as she approached. "Dad is fine, Ev. I didn't actually call you about him." The stark truth slowly dawned on me, each jagged piece slicing deeper until the betrayal left me numb. "It was you," I whispered, my voice leaden. "You're the one who lied to me, who got me out to the middle of nowhere so Damon could—" I couldn't finish the sentence, everything becoming horribly clear now in my mind. This was no mistake or false alarm. It was a calculated act of cruelty by the two people I cared most about in the world. Trish grimaced, unable to meet my stricken gaze. "I didn't mean for it to go so far. I was just trying to save it," I lashed out, my voice echoing across the sterile lobby. "I don't want to hear another word out of your lying mouth." Angry tears burned in my eyes, and I turned away from her, too livid and hurt to continue the conversation. That's when a familiar figure striding through the sliding doors caught my attention. "Jules?" I called out in disbelief. The blonde-haired man looked up, and his eyes widened when he saw me. "Everly, what are you doing here?" He quickly crossed the lobby towards me, concern etched on his weathered features. "Is everything okay?" I opened my mouth to respond, but a fresh wave of anguish rendered me temporarily speechless. Jules was the first to notice Damon stride in right behind him, looking smug and not the least bit apologetic. "You son of a bitch!" Jules growled, advancing on him with fury in his eyes. "What kind of sick game are you playing here?" To my utter astonishment, Damon just chuckled darkly and smirked at us both. "Relax, old man. Just taking out the trash is all." Jules's face contorted with rage, and he launched himself at Damon with a feral roar. I could only watch in stunned silence as the two men grappled violently in the middle of the hospital lobby, crashing into chairs and potted plants. The nursing staff scattered in shock and alarm, shouting at them furiously to stop. But it was as if the world had fallen away around me, leaving me adrift in a sea of hurt and disbelief at the depth of my supposed loved one's depravity. How could they do this to me? What game was Damon playing at, and why was Jules so angry at him? Sickening scenarios began flitting through my mind, each more disturbing than the last. One thing was certain. I wouldn't rest until I uncovered the truth and made each and every one of them pay for this unforgivable betrayal. My quest for vengeance had only just begun. It took 3 burly security guards to finally pull Jules and Damon apart and forcibly remove them from the hospital. I stood rooted to the spot, numb from the maelstrom of emotions raging inside me. "Everly, are you all right?" Trish's timid voice snapped me out of my daze. I whirled on her, my eyes blazing with fury and hurt. "Don't you dare act concerned about me after the twisted stunt you pulled." I spat acidly. "You're just as bad as him." Trish recoiled, her face crumpling with remorse. I never meant to hurt you, Ev. I just wanted to open your eyes to what a sleaze Damon really is. By lying and manipulating me? I gave a mirthless laugh. Wow, you've got some backwards logic there, sis. Shoving roughly past her, I stormed out of the hospital and into the harsh glare of the parking lot lights. The blast of icy wind was a sharp smack to my senses after the stifling emotional cyclone inside. I pulled my jacket tighter and started marching with single-minded purpose towards the exit. I had gambled everything on Damon, letting him into the most intimate spaces of my life, my friends, my family, my career, and he had violated that trust in the cruelest way imaginable, all for his own twisted amusement and gain. It made me physically ill, but I was done being the sad, simpering victim. Damon Blackwood wanted to play sick games? Fine. Two could tango on that dance floor, and I had no problem fighting dirty to take him down once and for all. My phone buzzed with an incoming call, and I fished it out, not breaking stride. It was Jules. Jules, hey, I answered tersely. I was just coming to find you. Save it. I already know what this asshat pulled, he growled, his voice still edged with fury. Where are you? I'll come grab you. No need. I'm heading your way right now. We need to talk. You're damn right we do. I'll fill you in on everything that smug prick's been up to. A hard knot formed in the pit of my stomach as I realized the full depths of Damon's betrayal. I can't wait to hear it. Oh, I promise it'll be worth the wait, Jules said grimly. I have a file on him that'll make your hair curl. I clenched my jaw, my steps turning into an angry stomp across the cracked pavement as I crossed the final stretch towards the exit. Good. Because when we're through, Damon Blackwood won't know what hit him. An hour later, I was seated across from Jules in a booth at a dingy all-night diner just outside of town. A cheap mug of scorching black coffee warmed my still trembling hands as he filled me in on the sordid details of Damon's misdeeds. That bastard used you to get insider info on potential property flips and leads on desperate home sellers, Jules said in a low, furious tone. He took advantage of your connections and reputation in the community for his own underhanded real estate schemes. I felt like I'd been sucker-punched in the gut as Jules's words sank in. So that's why Damon had pursued me, because he saw an angle to exploit my circumstances for profit, the heartless, soulless prick. Well, the jig is up, I stated with a hard edge. I'm going to take great pleasure in dismantling every single one of his shoddy business dealings and burying his smarmy ass. Jules nodded, his expression turning grim. You may want to buckle up, Ev, because I'm just scratching the surface on his shady crap. He slid a thick manila folder across the table to me. I flipped it open, my eyes widening at the incriminating documents and damning evidence meticulously compiled inside. A feral smile slowly spread across my face as the thirst for revenge took hold. If Damon thought he could slither away from this unscathed, he had vastly underestimated the power of an angry woman scorned. His downfall was just beginning. The dingy diner's fluorescent lights cast a sickly glow over Jules' face as he slid the final document across the table to me. I stared at the damning evidence laid out before me, a hardened resolve filling my veins. This is everything I could dig up on that weasel's scheming, he said grimly. Fraudulent loan applications, cooked books, under-the-table payments to building inspectors, you name the scam, he's run it. I gave a slow nod, finally understanding the full extent of Damon's betrayal and depravity. Using me was just the grotesque tip of the iceberg when it came to his devious misdeeds. How did you get all this? I asked, meeting Jules' gaze levelly. He shrugged one shoulder. I've got eyes and ears everywhere in this town. When folks started getting jerked around by Blackwood's dodgy dealings, word traveled fast. So you're not the only one he's burned, then. The barest flicker of anger flickered across Jules's weathered features. Definitely not. That snake doesn't care whose lives he has to ruin as long as he keeps dragging in profits. A grim idea began taking shape in my mind. One that could potentially bring Damon's nefarious empire crashing down once and for all. Then we need to rally the troops, I stated, pushing the file aside. Get everyone who's been screwed over by Damon on our side. If we mount a unified front, expose all his misdeeds at once, it'll bury him for good. Jules considered this for a moment, then gave a approving nod. You've got a mean, vengeful streak, Carrington. I like it. He raised his chipped coffee mug. to taking that scumbag down once and for all. I clinked my cup against his. You know it. Over the next few weeks, Jules and I operated like spies in the shadows, recruiting more of Damon's disgruntled victims into our covert band of rebels. Some were older folks he'd preyed upon with predatory reverse mortgage schemes, fleecing them out of their family homes. Others were contractors and suppliers he'd stiffed payments or fees, leaving their businesses in financial ruin. Each intake meeting revealed another sickening layer of Damon's sociopathic grifting. Yet with every new ally that joined our ranks, I felt a pulsing sense of empowerment and purpose fueling my quest for vengeance. And I would be at the core, driving the final nails into his professional and personal coffins. Our meetings took place in secret locations, the back rooms of dive bars, shuttered businesses after hours, even the dugouts of youth baseball fields after practices ended. It didn't matter where we convened, only that our movement remained securely under the radar until we were fully prepared to strike. With each recruit's impassioned story and litany of grievances against Damon, my determination only intensified. This was bigger than just my own vendetta, I realized. We were fighting for justice, for the soul of our community against corporate greed and exploitation. No more would Damon Blackwood be allowed to callously destroy people's lives, homes, and livelihoods for his own selfish gain. The reign of his corrupt practices was over. One crisp March night, our rebel alliance had finally swelled to over 24 members, all banded together by the singular driving force of making Damon answer for his litany of sins. Jules and I stood before the assembled group, fueled by their unified energy and hunger for reckoning. People of Brightfield, I declared firmly, the time for hiding in the shadows is over. Our fight to expose Damon Blackwood's poisonous schemes begins tonight. Who's ready to see that bastard burn? A roar of cheers and applause erupted from the crowd. I allowed a feral grin to spread across my face as righteous vengeance flowed through my veins. The game was on, and Damon Blackwood wouldn't know what hit him. With our covert rebel network assembled, it was time to unleash our meticulously planned assault on Damon's deceitful empire. We'd operate on multiple fronts, a coordinated barrage hitting him from every angle until he had nowhere left to hide. The first salvo came in the form of an explosive exposé published by Marcia Wilcox, the fiery editor of the Brightfield Gazette. Marcia was one of the first to join our cause after Damon preyed on her elderly parents with a shady reverse mortgage scheme. Her 6-page front-page story laid bare all the grisly details of Damon's profiteering off vulnerable folks in town. Coercion tactics, doctored paperwork, scripted high-pressure sales pitches. No stone was left unturned in eviscerating Damon's shoddy business practices. I'll never forget picking up that issue hot off the presses and seeing Damon's smug, punchable face splashed across the cover under the damning headline, Blackwood's Neighborhood Nightmare, Brightfield's Hustler Conman Exposed. That first shot across his bow was just an opening overture. Next came the online onslaught, a barrage of scathing reviews, unvarnished testimonials, and red flag warnings flooding every property site, realtor forum, and social media platform Damon was connected to. Our merry band of truth bombers relentlessly pounded him from every digital front, burying his online presence in a tidal wave of negativity. Within days, Damon's manicured 5-star rated business pages were inundated with scam alerts and avoid-at-all-costs diatribes from scorned clients he'd fleeced throughout the years. There was no ignoring or deleting the growing reckoning encircling him. The coup de grace, however, was when we moved our fight to the bureaucratic trenches. Using the mountains of paper trail evidence Jules had compiled over the years, we began filing a merciless blitz of formal complaints, affidavits, and legal proceedings against Damon with every regulatory board, government agency, and oversight committee available. Phony loan docs, illegal side payments, zoning requirement shortcuts. We left no infraction or shady business tactic off the table. Our barrage opened up multiple disciplinary investigations by the Bar Association, IRS, EPA, and half a dozen other acronym agencies. It was a barely legal tornado of bureaucratic bombardment, each new inquiry and proceeding tightening the vice around Damon's crooked operations. Within weeks, he was drowning under the deluge, his business and personal life in flames on every channel and platform available to him. And through it all, I drank in every agonizing second of his annihilation and unraveling. It was on a balmy spring evening that the cathartic culmination finally occurred. Jules and I had convened our alliance downtown in the courtyard outside Damon's offices for a ceremonial pièce de résistance. As crowds gathered with protesters, that bastard finally emerged onto the front steps, his slick veneer shredded as he bellowed furiously into the cameras and microphones clustered around him. "This is a damn witch hunt," he railed, spittle flying as his face mottled purple with rage. "A pathetic attempt by a gang of bitter has-beens and losers to string me up with lies and innuendo." I watched with sheer satisfaction as he completely unspooled the arrogant bravado that had once been his calling card, now reduced to enraged, desperate shrieks. Any professional composure he once feigned was obliterated, his unstable and volatile true nature laid bare for all to see. Turning his wildly accusing glare onto the assembled crowd, his eyes finally landed directly on me, a silent but implacable figure watching his raging implosion. "You," he snarled, stabbing a finger in my direction as he took one staggering step forward. "This is all you're doing, you psychotic little—" But whatever vile diatribe he was preparing was cut off by the deafening din of the gathered protesters. A roaring cacophony of boos and jeers rained down upon Damon, drowning him out as more voices joined the reckoning. I held his gaze steadily, allowing the delicious moment to wash over me. This was the culminating vengeance I had meticulously orchestrated these past weeks. Every dizzying downfall that had led to this beautifully destructive spectacle. And it was just the beginning of Damon Blackwood's total ruination. The raucous cacophony of jeers and boos swelled to a deafening roar, drowning out Damon's desperate attempts to be heard over the crowd. His face was mottled purple, bulging veins protruding from his neck as he gesticulated wildly on the steps. "You'll all regret this." He tried bellowing over the din. "You hear me? I'll have every one of you pathetic nobodies bankrupted and blacklisted so fast." His threats abruptly cut off as a rotten tomato arced through the air, splattering squarely across his cheek in an explosion of viscous seeds and pulp. The crowd erupted in riotous cheers and laughter at the direct hit. Damon froze, seemingly in shock as the sticky juices oozed down his face. Then his expression contorted into one of pure, unbridled rage. "Who threw that?" he snarled, hands balling into fists as his wild eyes scanned the crowd. "Show yourself, you coward." Another projectile, this one an egg, came sailing from the other direction, splattering against his shoulder. The crowd howled with mocking delight, drunk on the cathartic release of pummeling their tormentor. More rotten fruits and curdled food items started raining down mercilessly as Damon uselessly tried to cover his head and stumbled back towards the door of his office building. His formerly tailored suit was absolutely drenched and stained with every putrid condiment imaginable. Seizing the opportunity, I stepped forward and raised my arms, quieting the riotous crowd. "Damon Blackwood," I called out in a booming voice. "For years you've slithered through our community, leeching and exploiting anyone you could for your own selfish greed." I slowly crossed the courtyard, all eyes locked on me as Damon cowered under the awning, his face twisted into a vicious sneer. "You took advantage of innocent people's trust, their homes, their life savings, all to line your pockets and feed your ego," I continued, knifing him with my glare. "You're a remorseless parasite, and today your reign of terror and deception is over." A roar of approval rose from the assembled crowd. Damon opened his mouth to retort, but I silenced him by raising my hand. "I should have listened to the warnings about you," I said, feeling a pang of regret. "Should have seen the ugliness and instability festering beneath that conman's charm. But no more." Taking a deep breath, I fixed him with a look of pure steel. "You'll never be able to manipulate, lie, or swindle your way into another person's life after this. No one will be dumb enough to fall for your cheap tricks. You're finished." Damon's face twisted with rage and hatred as the final dams of his waning self-control splintered apart. "You ungrateful bitch," he howled, spittle spraying as he charged towards me. "I made you. Without me, you'd just be another worthless, lonely nobody." Faster than I could blink, Jules was there, barreling into Damon and tackling him to the ground in a thunderous crash. The two men grappled violently, trading wild blows as the frenzied crowd pressed in around them, chanting for blood. Fists and profanities flew between them, the fight rapidly devolving into a sloppy, chaotic brawl. Then, with one last brutal headbutt, Jules rendered Damon a crumpled, semi-conscious heap, his nose shattered and pouring blood. Jules rose to his feet, chest heaving as the crowd roared its approval, ecstatic to see the disgraced snake receiving his just desserts. He turned to me, eyes blazing with exhilaration and savage triumph. Stepping forward, I spat a mouthful of phlegm onto Damon's ruined face, a final, contemptuous insult to the fallen con artist. "That's for all the lives you destroyed, you pathetic worm," I growled. "I hope it was worth it." With that, I turned and strode away, forever leaving that wretched chapter of my life to the flames. Damon Blackwood's downfall was complete. The waking nightmare he had brought upon me, my friends and my community, was finally over. Justice had been exacted. Vengeance achieved. The roar of the triumphant crowd faded into the distance as I walked away from the bloodied, broken heap that was Damon Blackwood. My steps were steady, my heart brimming with equal parts vindication and relief that this ugliness was finally over. "You did good back there, kid." I glanced over at Jules, matching my stride. A satisfied grin spread across his weathered features. He reached out and gave my shoulder an affectionate squeeze. "It's over," I said with a slow exhale. "All of the lies, the backstabbing, the torment, it's finally in the rear view." Jules nodded sagely. "That weasel got exactly what he deserved. He's got a long way to fall from grace." "If he even had an ounce of grace to begin with," I countered. Damon was the most mercenary, self-serving person I'd ever encountered. Using people as disposable pawns had been his true nature all along. I felt a pang of disgust toward my former self for falling for his cheap charisma and empty promises. How could I have been so blind and naive, so eager to believe that a man like that could ever really care about me? "Hey," Jules' gruff voice snapped me from my self-admonishment. "Don't go doing that thing where you take all the blame on yourself. That prick's whole game was knowing just what strings to pull to milk people dry." He was right, I realized with a rueful shake of my head. Damon had been a master manipulator, unraveling my vulnerabilities with skilled precision. Heaping more shame on my own shoulders let him off the hook for his reprehensible actions. We walked together in contemplative silence for a few beats before I spoke again. "What's next for you?" I asked. "Now that Damon's out of the picture for good, I mean." Jules' expression turned pensive as he considered this. "Way I see it, there's always going to be another swindler trying to make a buck at someone else's expense in this town. Brightfield's ripe for that sort of parasitic opportunism." His eyes took on a steely glint. "Way I figure, someone needs to keep an eye out for those kinds of bad seeds. Stop 'em from getting too deep-rooted, if you catch my drift." I felt a slow smile tugging at the corners of my mouth as the implication of his words sunk in. "So, you're going to be the new watcher on the wall? Brightfield's avenging angel?" "Something like that," he replied with a wry smirk, "though maybe hold off on the angel comparisons. Stained my hands getting this far." With a hearty chuckle, he gave my back an affectionate pat. "You take care of yourself now, Everly. Keep that fighting spirit alive, and don't let any other two-bit hustlers drag you through the mud again." "You got it," I assured him earnestly. "Those days are long behind me." As Jules turned and headed off down a side street, I felt a renewed sense of purpose and direction infusing my steps. A weight had truly been lifted, the shackles of torment and self-doubt that Damon had bound me with finally shattered. For too long I had let myself be defined by his toxic influence and my blind refusal to heed the warnings about his true nature. I had been cowed and controlled, allowing myself to be molded into the woman he wanted me to be rather than embracing my own identity. But not anymore. Those days of being bullied, belittled, and undermined were over. I was Everly Carrington, self-possessed, resilient, and stronger than I ever knew. The protracted nightmare was finally over. All that was left to do now was look forward and keep marching defiantly ahead into the bright new chapter of peace and empowerment I had reclaimed for myself. No longer a victim, I was the victor, and absolutely nothing would make me surrender that hard-won victory again.